Hello there, and welcome to CIO UK Leadership Live. I'm Doug Drinkwater, the editor of CIO UK, and today I'm joined by Sarah Cunningham, who is the Senior VP of Enterprise IT at Arm. Sarah, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Doug. Thanks very much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Fantastic. So today we're going to be looking at your education, an unusual or unconventional route, you could say, into senior technology leadership roles. We're going to look at your leadership qualities and also the importance of cultural awareness. And we're also going to look at some of the D&I initiatives that you've spearheaded over the last year, as well as work on cloud and SD-WAN and all other elements of your role. Now, if time allows, as per other CIO UK Leadership Lives, I will ask a couple of questions at the end that, shall we say, are more unconventional. So hopefully we'll get an idea of who the real Sarah Cunningham is by the end of this session today.
Excellent.
As a bit of brief background, so Sarah's mentioned the Senior VP of Enterprise IT at Arm. Most of you will know Arm from the chips you see in smartphones, desktops, and servers. And according to Arm, there's 240 plus billion chips in products today, covering almost 70% of the world's population. That gives you an idea of the scale they have today. And prior to joining Arm in 2018, Sarah's held senior service management and operational roles at Vocalink, JLT Group, XL Catlin and Thomson Reuters, where I believe she worked for around 17 years in some interesting working environments, shall we say, to boot. But Sarah, I want to start with your background and how you came to be a technology leader, because I think what's interesting is you didn't go to university. So just talk us through how you got to this point and how you would describe your own journey, really.
Yeah, you're right. It wasn't a traditional route, and 27 odd years ago, when the career advice that you got at school was very, very binary. So it was kind of, you either went into a vocation or you went into a university, and there was no kind of concept of a different path, or certainly not for me at school. So when I was at school, I found out that I was dyslexic, and it was a real blow to my confidence because there wasn't the same level of understanding about how you help people progress within those with those gifts, for want of a better word, or actually, a really good understanding about what was great about people with who weren't traditionally normal, as we were described at school. So I really, really struggled. And while I enjoyed the social side of school and sports and other things, educationally I struggled. So when it came to going into the sixth form, I left and went to a sixth form that did a wider variety of options, which included film studies, theatre studies, acting, as well as traditional A levels such as, Italian, French, English, others. And I spent 2 years studying film studies, theatre studies, and acting there, and really enjoyed it. Again, from a social point of view, but quickly realized there was very little natural talent that sat within my capability in acting. And that when I left at 18, I'd really have to think about what I wanted to do. So I'd done lots of work in services. So I always had Saturday jobs, from waitressing to working in kitchens. So I went into those types of roles when I left sixth form, and then started to work decided I wanted to move to London. I grew up just outside of London. And actually, it felt really exciting. It felt like there were lots of opportunities, and I could still live with my friends who'd gone to university and experience some of the fun sides of that. So I went into London, and so I'd work as a receptionist. And while I was doing those roles, there were IT elements in the organisations that I was working in. And I remember being completely fascinated at how straightforward and logical it was. And the people who were doing those roles really were, got to see all aspects of the organization. They worked across all of the different departments. They had really strong relationships with people. And I had a natural curiosity about that. So after a couple of years in that space, I saw a role on a help desk in an equity order routing company, and I went for an interview there, and kind of really wanted to sweet talk the CEO, because I was like, look, I don't have any IT experience, but like I'm sure I'm going to be a lot cheaper than anyone else, and I'm sure if you give me a chance, I'll work really hard. And that was really my entry into IT, and it was a really great place to start. Service desks are a great place to start. You learn all about the customers, you learn all about the technology, so that kind of got me really into it.
Mm-hmm. And would you say you've had any barriers along the way? Because there is a preconceived notion, I do think, around what kind of education route you should take, especially with degrees. But also, if you know, that, you know, with dyslexia in particular, some people going back 10, 15 years in particular may have taken a different view on that than they would do today. Have you seen that as a blocker in some instances?
So I think that I definitely haven't seen it as a blocker per se. But I definitely had, I guess, anxiety about it, probably until I was in my early 30s. So when I was in my mid-20s, I had an amazing boss who taught me loads, and I'm sure we'll cover those things at another point. And she had asked for some support for me when from the learning team at the organization I was in. And because she's like, you know, I have this great talent, but she's dyslexic, and I think we could find some writing training or some communication training for her. And they were like, oh, why do you want to fire her? And she was like, no, I want to help. So there was that preconception. And then also until I was about 30, like I didn't really talk about not having a degree, because it was I was embarrassed because everybody else that I worked with did, and it was just assumed that you had one. I didn't say on my resume whether I did or didn't have one. Like I was purposely quite vague about that. And again, I had another great leader who was like, well, look, I can put you through Open University and we'll sponsor you through all of those things, but do you think it actually matters now?
Yeah, true.
You know, if you think of all the experience you have to date, you probably wouldn't have had that if you had gone a traditional route. Yeah. And she was right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's super interesting. I ask almost sort of a personal interest on the degree, because it's a different field entirely. But I haven't got a degree either, and come into journalism, there's a notion that you should you should come from a certain background and you should have a certain academic qualification. So I do think there's some that's dispelling the myth, perhaps, of what certifications give you and what experience give you as well. Really,
I think you're 1,000% right, and actually now I'm quite proud of it. I'm quite proud of the fact that I don't, not because I think you should think, not because I think it's wrong to have a degree, but because actually you don't have to, if you have the right attitude and the right ethics around how you behave and how you want to progress in life. I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
And I'm purposely now spending time with, when invited, with kind of 16 to 18-year-olds in schools, talking about alternative routes, because one of the things that I found through talking to my son's school, actually at that age, similar to how I was at kind of 15 to 18, you think there's no other path.
Yeah.
So you think you're really limited in what you can achieve, when actually that's not the case, as you know, Doug.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah, I want to come on to your kind of recent promotion in a few moments and what that role entails as you move forward. But just keeping with yourself really is what your personality is and your leadership style. How do you think these experiences have shaped you as a leader and that authenticity? Because I believe I have the foresight of having seen your CIO 100 application. I believe your son, was diagnosed with autism. So you've had a few kind of life challenges along the way. How would you say that that's informed not only who you are, but also how you manage those teams?
So I think that through my life experience, and also being in an organization like ARM, which really does champion individuality and championing you being your brilliant self, you being authentic to who you are, has really helped with the creating an environment of psychological safety where you feel that you can be open about these things. So I was very open about my son's diagnosis and what it meant to me, because even though I'm happy we know, and I'm happy we have the right support mechanisms around him now, first couple of days I was really sad. I was really sad that I'd done something wrong, or I hadn't been supporting him in the right way, or I'd drunk too much coffee during pregnancy, you know, all of the things that are actually completely wrong, but you go through that cycle of acceptance. So I think that's really helped, and the environment at Arms really helped. But for me, I think both my dyslexia, meaning that I don't like lots of written detail. I much prefer to have a conversation and bring things to life and agree with things, means that it's really given me the leadership style I have, which is, you know, my organization, which is, you know, knocking on for nearly 1,000 people now, if we include the partners that we rely heavily on to deliver our services. People aren't a name on a spreadsheet. You know, I every year I have a goal of having a one-to-one with every single person in the organization, because I really want to know about the fact that, I don't know, Wendy likes to have sushi with her son once a week and he's 7, and, you know, just the humanness of it, and it just helps bring us all together and make us closer.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that being authentic, being your true self, which is actually what I know we were sat together at the CIO 100, where Joe Drake was speaking about much the same thing of, you know, almost being accused of being too friendly, and she said, well, actually, I've just got to be myself. You know, I've got to lead with the qualities that I've been given, rather than perhaps having to adapt to a different environment.
And it's always really awkward, right, when you're trying to think about how someone else would answer a question or how someone else would do things. Actually, it's really inhibiting, and it's not very natural, and people see straight away that you're not being authentic, and you're not being yourself, which I think is so. She was great. I mean, her whole speech was excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sarah, I want to come on to some of your projects in a minute. So, and in particular, I think there's some outstanding work from what we saw on D&I. But just talk me through the recent promotion to the SVP role. What's your kind of core role and remit? What's your trajectory of travel for the year ahead? Where are you kind of looking to? Big question. I'm asking about 5 questions in one there, but
that's lots, isn't it? So I was lucky enough to. So what would be a traditional enterprise IT function under a single CIO within Arm a few years ago separated into 2 parts of the organization. What we class as digital IT was essentially our enterprise product ownership and development went into marketing and kind of created a digital world. And then enterprise security and technology operations was what I ran, moved under the CFO. I think it's excellent working under the CFO, by the way. I think that it's really helped me understand the mechanics of how organizations run. I think so much decision making and so much influence across the organization actually sits in the CFO function, that there was a lot to learn there. So in March of this year, Arm decided to bring all those functions together under a single leader, and I was really honoured that I was chosen to take on that role. And it was something I'd only really discovered in the last couple of years that I really wanted to do. When I had breakfast with a lady at Amazon a couple of years ago, we were talking about the fact that the CIO had left Arm, and she was like, "Would you want to be the CIO?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I've never really thought about that." And she's like, "Do you want somebody else to be the CIO?" And I was like, no, actually, I don't. So at that stage, I was quite clear, both with my leadership and with Arm's leadership and with my own personal development, about where I wanted to go and what step I wanted to take when an opportunity arose. So I had some great mentoring from both internal in Arm and external in Arm, and also spent a lot of time working on initiatives that were wider than enterprise IT, so our global response to COVID, and being the Cambridge site lead for Arm, which is our largest campus, and really kind of looking holistically at my skill sets and maturing those. So Arm really helped me build to be ready for that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So at the moment, we run in enterprise IT everything from enterprise security, from our service desk and our infrastructure, all the way through to our high performance compute. So we have 127,000 slots in our on-prem data center. So that's not counting our cloud presence.
Wow. That's a big breadth of role there. Coming beyond IT, out of interest, that's something that we're seeing an increasing trend of. Actually, I just came back from the Gartner Symposium in in Barcelona. And
Oh, did you have a good time?
oh, it's fast. I mean, really interesting conversation,
Yeah.
and the scale of the event was quite incredible in its own right. But the thing I thought was quite interesting was that IT leadership is kind of not just confined to just a kind of back office order taker these days. It's much more deeply involved and engaged with other business functions. Is that something that you're kind of seeing in your role, that there's much more? It's a bit of a cliche, but technology is the business, right? It's kind of underpinning everything that the organization's trying to do.
So I think I think you're absolutely right, and I don't think it's a new thing that technology has that capability. I think what is happening is that we're seeing a resurgence of people understanding how important automation and end-to-end life cycles of things, whether they're orders or payments or whatever they are, all sitting together. And IT is the unique enabler for that. I think that COVID had a unique role in making organizations very aware again of how pivotal IT is to ensuring that they can operate. So that definitely made a difference, I think, for all IT leaders.
Yeah. Yeah, a phrase I keep hearing actually is it's pretty pertinent to where we are right now, but it's never waste a good crisis. It seems to be coming up time and time again in terms of IT's opportunity to infuse what the organization is doing or extend what the organization is doing as well.
It can, and actually IT is one of those places that actually, in many respects thrives in a good crisis, because through years and years of best practice and processes and architectural design and all those other things, it becomes second nature to know how to react in a crisis, have frameworks about how you communicate in them, and other things that actually end up applying across everything you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I guess one area, kind of a bit of a segue here, but that isn't so good in the IT industry at the moment is when we look at how diverse teams are. Generally we know this is kind of it's white and it's male dominated, but I know you've been doing some interesting work not only on driving some of this stuff, working with teams, but also measuring it, which I think is the key principle, isn't it? Because it's all right kind of walking the walk and actually setting up a lot of this work, but if you don't measure it and see where you are year on year, then you can't really gauge, I guess, what progress you're making.
Yeah, and again, I think it's something you can be passionate about as an individual. You can drive a lot in, but ultimately, unless the organisation that you work in is tuned into it and is passionate about it too, that you have very limited success. So we're really lucky in Arm that we have Tamika Curry-Smith, who's our Chief Diversity Officer, and we have a small organisation that looks at how Arm operates in that space, from people, culture, we have leadership and partnerships and the whole ecosystem about where we need to make a step change. And within that process, we identified a way of seeing how active people were as part of an annual review cycle, so that we could measure not measures the success of it, but just kind of see where we were and see what step changes we wanted to do and what actually active meant to us. And I think that's made a huge difference.
Yeah. So, I mean, just talk us through some of the stuff that you've done, because I know you're a mentor, you're a judge. I mean, some of this stuff is internal to Arm, some of it's externals. Just talk us through some of the activities that you're driving or supporting within Arm in that kind of D&I space.
So within the D&I space, we have a DEI ambassador within IT who looks at a calendar of events through the year that the IT organisation can either participate into or consume, and that's overlaid on top of what Arm does itself. And I'm the sponsor for that as I'm in enterprise IT. And within my leadership, within Arm we have ERG, so employee research unit groups that look at different parts of diversity that we want to learn from and improve the experience in. And my leadership team are sponsor Pride at Arm, for example, and also disability at Arm. So we I think that we spend a lot of time wanting to make those areas better. in terms of investment in our time and initiatives that we can run and things that we can learn from. We also, yes, you're right, I also mentor. I've mentored for a long time. So I think I've mentored over 25 women now, and I've currently got 3 women that I'm mentoring within ARM. And interestingly enough, I think that I'm not just so one of the ladies that I'm mentoring at the moment, I wasn't sought out purely for being female in a leadership role, but also being a mother, because the transition back from maternity leave into a working environment, and you understanding what your own parameters of that means, it isn't always easy for someone to decide. So, you know, that was a really interesting dynamic. We also invested last year. So I hadn't actually realised how underfunded transgender healthcare was in the UK, and what a big issue it was. And I was lucky enough to have a lady in our organisation who was incredibly passionate about it, and had taken the time to put a really detailed talk together around it and about what other companies are offering. And through her work, she had been championing it across ARM and had come to me. And as part of my, I was playing a unique role at the time on the UK Leadership team as well, which is part of the group that approves our private healthcare each year. So as we evolve our services, you know, what we need to change, what we don't. And through Gemma's work, we took it to the benefits team under Aileen Messenger, and then presented it to the UKLT, who accepted that we now do full transgender healthcare in ARM. And I think at the moment, we're still probably one of only, I think there's less than 5 organisations in the UK who actually offer the full service. And, you know, when we looked at what we offered before, we thought that, you know, we had it written down, we had transgender healthcare on 1 tick. You know, 1 tick meant that you got 1 consultation, and no support afterwards and no plan. So that for us, that was a huge step forward. Not only because it's an important issue that needs to be recognised, but also there is no other option. So unless you have the money yourself to pay for it, there was something like a 60-year wait list in the UK, or 70-year wait list for any surgery. So it really felt like it was the right thing to do.
So Sarah, just on that transgender policy, I mean, you mentioned before about the culture and the ethos of ARM almost enabling you to do some of these changes. To what extent do you think that's enabled you to drive that change much more quickly than if you worked potentially in another sector, you know, where there's different more traditional views, shall we say? I mean, you could encounter some challenges there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I haven't worked in other sectors for 4 or 5 years now, so it's hard to reflect on that. What I will reflect on is, you're right, I think ARM is an organisation that is very passionate and puts an incredible amount of effort into the ability to be, as I said before, psychologically safe and enabling you to be yourself. And, you know, even if I look at our core values, which are we not I, do great things. It's just changed from passion to progress to do great things, which are essentially one in the same thing, but an evolution of showing, you know, how we're maturing at ARM, and then be your brilliant self. So they're the values that we are assessed on every year as part of our performance cycle. And I think that you're right. We have so ARM enables us to do these things by having core values like this, but also it's a bit like the COVID thing. It was a perfect time. So there's a huge amount of it in the media. There was an amazing woman in my organization, Gemma, who was championing it. We were going, you know, when it arrived in my awareness, we were a few months off the annual cycle of review of policies. So it was actually a great time as well. And I think all of those things make a massive difference. And the fact that ARM is so progressively, constantly assessing its benefits to make sure that they are right for the environment and the time that we live in is quite a unique thing as well. You know, we don't set a 5-year Bupa policy. We set an annual one that we review and adapt as the ecosystem outside of ARM evolves.
Absolutely, more agility, you could argue, in
Yeah.
terms of that culture. I guess I had two questions into one here, but as you reflect on the last year, what would you say you're most proud of? I know you've done some interesting work in terms of some pretty big workloads going into AWS and that kind of cloud migration journey, and SD-WAN as well, alongside the people, which obviously you can argue the most important beyond the technology. But and then as the second part of that question is, where next for you and for Arm? We know there are changes ahead. So what's what's on your to-do list for 2023?
Ooh, to-do lists are always great, aren't they? Do we ever stick to them? I think we start with a great list and we're like, do we always do them?
Yeah.
So we've had it's been actually a great kind of 4.5 years since I've joined Arm. We started with an infrastructure transformation, which was then the kind of foundations for cloud and SD-WAN and kind of some of the programs that we've started to deliver in the last year and a half. And within the digital space, we've also completed our Lead to Cash program, which is, the integration of Salesforce and S/4HANA and our IP downloads. So we have kind of true end-to-end, which again is a great baseline, because that's, once it's in, there's only ever evolution after that stage for us to mature our offerings, for us to, continue to evolve how we do things like ledgers and other things. So we've had a great 4.5 years and a great year and a half. I think that the things that are forefront in my mind at the moment are a continuing evolution of our security. So, really kind of looking at what does it mean to be an engineering organization where we don't make things. We are only as brilliant as the people that we have in and the IP that we sell. That's a really unique security posture, and how we continue to evolve those things, and also kind of the change in how we're using things. So for me, and I hate to keep talking about COVID, and one day we won't talk about COVID anymore, I'm sure, or it'll be a distant memory, but we use the offices and our facilities in a very different way before COVID. We've gone into COVID and now we're in a hybrid working, and I'm really excited about what does that mean for collaboration technology, for how we use our buildings, how we still innovate with each other, because I think that we've continued to evolve to valuing the individual's choice and how they want to consume IT and interface with the organizations, that presents different challenges for the technology organization and how we work around that. And there are loads of other things, like, don't get me wrong, we have a whole host, but kind of they're two areas that, like, kind of the collaboration and the security, two areas that I'm really excited to continue to build on.
Yeah, and as you say, it's hybrid workplace is going to roll, I think, on and on. It will evolve over time, won't it? In terms of, because I think also
that's all right. Like,
yeah.
It's not like you can make, you can't be particularly agile in that space. So it takes planning and it takes experimentation, and it takes a long time before you start to really see the benefits of it, because we sign these monolithic long agreements to stay in one place for a long time.
Yeah, true. And culturally, it's interesting, and from a leadership perspective, I'm certainly hearing a lot of CIOs and CTOs saying they're having to change almost the way that they oversee teams and individuals. Different individuals react differently, you can argue, to different work environments as well. So it's quite fascinating from a personal development standpoint, you can argue too, because you need to change how you oversee these teams and look into what the not just performance, but actual well-being as well, you can argue.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it's again one of those areas that that IT has been particularly lucky in, because it's certainly in all IT organizations that I've worked in, they've always been global, they've always been follow the sun. You've always had to work with people remotely as well as next to them. In fact, when I left Reuters and joined Catlin, or XL Catlin, which it became, it was really strange that the daily service review was all in person in a meeting room in just off Bishopsgate, and I'm like, oh, there's no one dialing in. There's no one dialing in, because you're so used to kind of running this kind of global footprint. So I think IT was felt very comfortable switching into this interfacing with people in different geographies and at different times more than other functions did.
Absolutely. Now, Sarah, my last two questions we're going to go a little bit off track, off piece, I should say, with this one. So, two questions for you. One of which is, what was your dream job growing up? And the second one is, you can invite 3 people to dinner. They can be dead or alive. Name them.
So, the growing up, like if you kind of look at my 16 to 18-year-old education, I desperately wanted to be an actress.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of my earliest memories is my mum dragging me off the stage as a ballet class because I decided that's where I was doing mine. And for what, though through studying it, as I say, I learned I had no natural talent in it. I have been to the Oscars lots of times through work. It's often like working for a news agency to get to go and do cool things.
Mm-hmm.
But what that did give me was a level of confidence and comfortableness in engaging and speaking and building relationships. So I desperately wanted to be an actress. I'm not an actress, but I definitely learned during my time of studying it. So yeah, very different from IT. And actually, when my acting teacher was like, I'm really sorry, Miss Cunningham, this isn't going to be your career. I did send her a picture when I was at the first time I was at the Oscars, just to kind of be like, I made it, not in the way we thought I would, or maybe in the way you thought I would. But then and then switching to dinner parties, it's a tough one, right? That's a really tough one. So I think that I'm absolutely obsessed with home programs. So Kevin MacLeod has been on my dream dinner party list for a long time. I mean, Georgie Clark kind of gets on there every now and again, but Kevin's the original and the best. And then there's like a whole slew of amazing characters that you'd like to have actually got to meet and talk to and really find out the truth.
Yeah.
Whether it's someone from the royal family like the Queen or Princess Diana, to someone like Margaret Thatcher, wherever you are on the politics spectrum, like she was pretty strong, pivotal woman. It'd be really great to pick her brain. And I think lastly, on a kind of a personal level, would probably be my dad. So he passed away 3 years ago. Where did that come from? But he passed away 3 years ago and had lived with dementia for 7. So I think I'd have him back.
Yeah.
Have some really positive memories of him, have my son get to see him in a non-ill way. That would be great.
Yeah. Oh, that's that's a wonderful list there, Sarah. And I'm sorry to have invoked those feelings about your dad.
Where did these swings of emotion come from?
But as I say, it's family is the most important thing as a collective and individually as well. So well, listen, thank you so much for joining me today at CIO UK Leadership Live. It's been wonderful. We spoke a bit at the CIO 100, didn't we? But it was nice to understand a bit more about your journey and some of the work that you've been working on really the last year. So once again, congratulations on being ranked in the CIO 100, and lovely to chat with you, and hope to see you again soon in the real world, not necessarily on
the real world. Thank you so much, Doug. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Sarah. And of course, thanks to you viewers for tuning in to today's session. I hope you enjoyed that and got some useful nuggets to take back into the workplace. That's all for now, but thanks, goodbye, and we'll see you soon.